Hey everyone, my name's Rachel and today we're going to be looking at a website which I've spoken a little bit about before called Lies Young Women Believe. Now I've spoken about this in another one of my videos. We looked at one of their articles and I wasn't really impressed by it. It is a Christian website. Well, it's a religious website. I think it's Christian. I'm pretty sure it's Christian. And the thing is that I don't really have any issue with the religious content they have on there. The problem I have with it is that they take religious teachings and use it to tell people how to live their lives or encourage certain actions, which I don't really agree with. Today, the article in particular that we're going to be looking at is called 5 Reasons to Ditch Your Truth. Basically, the whole kind of premise behind this article is why you shouldn't think for yourself and you should just trust in God and put all your faith into Him and doing what the Bible tells you to do and never interpret things in your own way. And I really don't like that. It's basically the opposite of how I like to live my life, and it's the opposite of how, if anyone ever listened to me, I would encourage people to live their lives. But it's just kind of my opinion. Unlike some of my videos, this isn't really a sciencey one, this isn't really a factual one, this is just me talking about my personal opinion, so feel free to ignore me if you want. But anyway, the article opens up with, "Live your truth. It's a banner that seems to be flying everywhere. The big idea is that we should do what feels right to us. No one knows us like we do, and no one has the right to tell us what is true for our individual lives, right? It's move away from the idea that truth is black and white and towards seeing a million shades of grey." And I'll be honest, this is how I live my life. I love this opening statement. If the article was just this, I would be praising it. I think it's great. I honestly don't think anything is just black and white, right or wrong, good or bad. I don't agree with that. I don't think anyone should have more influence over your life than you yourself. Unless you're like a small child, in which case your parents are probably right. But I'm a big believer in free will and understanding who you are and learning about yourself. I love that. I love that so much. The article goes on and says, "Can I be honest? It's a concept that makes my fists clench and my stomach tie up in knots. I know the notion that we have the freedom to determine what is true and right for us sounds warm and cozy as a fuzzy blanket on a cold day and as liberating as a flag flying on the 4th of July. But I also know it's total hogwash, ultimately unable to give us comfort and liberty we crave so desperately. I long to see you turn and run from the idea of living your truth." And I really don't understand this. And I kind of read that a bit jokingly, but honestly, it sounds a bit angry, doesn't it? And I don't really understand that. I wonder why this idea of kind of freedom and happiness and choosing life for yourself, I really wonder why it makes the author so angry and why it affects her so much and why she lets it affect her so much as well. Honestly, why does it matter to anyone else how someone chooses to live their lives, how they make their decisions? I don't know, I can't help but feel like this is a big overreaction. So the 5 reasons why you should ditch your truth open up with the big statement, "You're a liar." And it's always good to open up an article by insulting the audience and making them feel crappy about themselves, right? I mean, it's the first rule in a manipulator's handbook. You insult them and make them feel like you're the only one who can make them feel good again. You're creating that kind of needy relationship, right? When it comes to speaking truth, you simply cannot be trusted. Neither can I, because our hearts are warped by sin. They cannot be trusted. They have a long track record of lying to us about what is good and what is bad, what is true and what is false. Now, I don't understand this. I don't understand where they get this idea from. I'm sure you can think of at least one example of a time where you crave something or someone with all your heart. Okay, so I guess you could call that a craving or lust or whatever. I guess it changes depending on the context, right? Of what you want. I mean, often those kinds of urges are controlled by our subconscious. They happen in kind of the old or animalistic parts of the brain. In the limbic system, that usually has a bit of influence there. Freud, he liked to talk about this part of their personality. He called it the id. He said it was, kind of our fight or flight, our instinctual responses, our cravings for food and sex and just being around people, those natural animal instincts. And you know what? They are perfectly natural. They're not something we should be afraid of. They're not something we should demonize. And you know what else? Sometimes it's okay to give in to them. Now, I'm not saying we should just give in all the time and do whatever we want and screw morals and laws and ethics and caring about people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But teaching people to just suppress their instincts, suppress their feelings, suppress what they want all of the time, that's quite dangerous. And I would never want to teach someone that. I would never tell them to do that. There's no reason why some of the time we shouldn't listen to our impulses and try and understand them, and not only understand what they are and what we want, but why we're having those feelings. And then we can start to let them maybe influence our rational decisions a little bit more. Ignoring them completely is not healthy for anyone, but neither is just giving in altogether. It's about compromise. If you're free to define your truth with whatever your heart tells you in the moment, there's a good chance you'll end up in a ditch. Such an over-exaggeration. It's like they're trying to control the reader through fear again. I mean, following your impulses isn't always bad. I mean, it's not always good either, but like I say, it's about moderation and understanding yourself and others well enough to know when to act and when not to act. But telling people if they follow their impulses they're gonna die, that's a bit extreme. That is very extreme. God, can you imagine telling a kid that? Okay, the second point is that you're flying blind. Proverbs 14:12 gives us this warning. There is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way to death. God. Your truth can't take you to the life you were made for. That's the bad news. But God's truth can. That's the really good news. So once again, lots of talk of destruction and death in this whole section here. And why is so much about religion and its rules based on fear? That's one thing I've never liked about it. But basically, there's not a whole lot of explanation going on in this section. It's just saying, you don't know what you're doing, only God knows best, and never really explaining why. This really does remind me of, you know the Karl Marx quote that's sometimes kind of like it's quoted a lot, sometimes paraphrased, but you know, the whole religion is the opiate of the people, or opiate of the masses, however you want to say it. And because that's basically what this part of the article is all about. It's about stopping people from making their own choices and their own decisions. It's about telling people not to bother thinking for themselves because they'll never know anything anyway. Definitely not as much as God. I mean, why bother acting yourself if you'll never get it right? It's basically saying if you think for yourself, you'll die. And that is terrifying. That is seriously terrifying. Okay, point 3, we're all apple nibblers. Which sounds quite cute. I wouldn't mind being a little apple nibbler. The explanation is less cute though. The shift from God's truth to our own is as subtle as it is dangerous. We see this played out in the story of Eve. Yet the root of the shift was that Eve cared more about her own thoughts and feelings and understanding of the situation than God's. From there we can assume her truth became that she could disobey God without consequence, or that a good God wouldn't deny her anything she craved. Nibble, crunch, fall. Nibble is such a cute word, you can't use it in such a menacing way. As daughters of Eve, we remain nibblers on the rotten idea that we can override or rewrite God's truth. Although the consequences are not as devastating for us as they were for Eve, the fall of all mankind, we still wreak havoc on our lives when we listen to our truth instead of God's truth. Again, all about fear, come on! It's basically saying if you interpret the Bible in your own way, you'll wreak havoc. There's only one interpretation, and if you get it wrong, you are screwed. You know, I hate this. And it's coming back to this whole black and white thing, right? And I don't think anything is that simple. I think everything depends on context. And I don't think there's anything wrong with sometimes interpreting things in your own way and applying certain ideas to your own life in a different way to other people do. I don't care what this article says. You know better than anyone what's going on in your life, what's best for you. You know about the people around you. You need to trust in yourself to make the right judgments. And I think we can trust people to do that most of the time. And yeah, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you mess up. I've messed up more times than I can count. So often I've done the wrong thing and had to turn around and say, I'm sorry, I acted like a bitch, or I'm sorry, that was the wrong choice. But that's part of life, and that's what helps us grow as people. Every time I mess up, I feel bad about something, and that's just one step closer to me being a better person, because I know I'll never do that again. I know I'm not perfect, I know I'm never gonna be perfect, but as long as I keep trying to do better, and as long as I keep learning, what's so wrong with that? That's why there's no black and white, because even out of the worst things, if you can learn something good, it makes it all a little bit better, you know? Point number 4, we've got some growing up to do. Yes, we do. But how else do you learn if not through experience and figuring things out for yourself? When we decide to identify God's word as the source of truth, it's like planting roots in one spot. We grow up from there instead of constantly shifting our understanding of what is true. We gain wisdom inch by inch. I think this is kind of one of the big flaws in the teachings of some religious people. To them, it's about being told what is true and then just sticking with it. It's not about figuring things out for yourself and adapting and growing and changing, which I think is a real shame. Change can be a really good thing and I like to embrace it. I like to think that my knowledge is growing and learning and adapting all the time. You know, I don't believe that we all just have this like one path. I don't think we're like a seed that sprouts and then grows and then suddenly we're an oak tree. Yeah, I don't think people are like that. I mean, if you want to go with the kind of nature metaphor, I prefer the whole like we're a handful of grass seeds and we just kind of sprinkle them on the ground, and you know, some grow and some don't grow, and some grow higher than others and some get trimmed, and some grow wild and they get all tall and big, and some stay in a small patch and some cover a whole field, and either way it's all good and it's all different, and it's up to you which path you choose and where you end up and how you want to get there. And I think that's fine. I think that's brilliant. We can all be great little blades of grass. That's me being grass, by the way. I know it was a weird analogy, bear with me, please. Okay, point number 5 is there's only one source of truth. Let there be no confusion. There is no your truth or my truth. There is just the truth, and it has a single source. The Bible tells us that the truth is knowable. John 8:32. You don't have to guess about what is true about the world around you or go with what your feelings tell you on any given day. So what do you say? Let's send the pendulum back, swinging in the opposite direction, away from the idea that we choose our own truth. Now, I don't know about you, but this sounds like a boring and unrealistic life to me. Like, do you really want everyone to do the same things and believe in the same things and act the same way as everyone else? That sounds kind of dull. Creativity springs from conflict, from energy, from passion, and that creates some of the most wonderful things in our lives. We wouldn't have half this technology without creativity and passion and a little bit of conflict. I mean, as a woman in the UK, I feel so completely lucky. I have so much freedom to choose what I do with my life, and I want to embrace that. If I hadn't wanted to take risks, if I hadn't spent years working on figuring out who I am and making mistakes and learning from them and figuring out what I want to do, if I hadn't impulsively quit my job last year, if I hadn't followed my own truth, I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be this happy. I wouldn't have such an incredible life. I wouldn't be this content. I wouldn't have Danny. I know I've worked so hard to get where I am. I really have. But I'm also so lucky to be here. And I'm grateful for what I have. But I also know that I'm the one who got me here. And over the last 2 years, Dan is the one who's got me here. And my friends and my family are the ones who've got me here. Without people like James Dean and Matt Smith and Mafood and Ian and just everyone I can think of, like all my amazing, wonderful friends, like without them, I wouldn't be here. And to every single one of them, I'm so thankful. They encouraged me to do what I thought was right and to try different things and go down different paths, and they were always there to support me, whether I did well or whether I screwed up. And that's the thing. It was the people that got me here, and it's those people who deserve the credit, not some god. The problem with this article and ones like it, and the people who think this way, is that they never give enough credit to real people. They're always willing to kind of pass it off to a god or a higher power. They forget about the wonderful, smart, kind people in their lives. They forget that they themselves are probably wonderful, smart, kind people, and they don't give enough credit to themselves or others. And you know what, that's why I'm never gonna ditch my truth, and I wouldn't want anyone else to either. I think we all need to give ourselves a little more credit and trust in ourselves a little bit more. And I really don't see anything wrong with that. But anyway, I am going to end this here. I'm sorry if this has sounded like a little bit preachy today. I don't know. I think I just wanted to make a bit of a video that was kind of more about my opinions and how I see the world rather than kind of like anything too heavily based on facts or science or whatever. But anyway, if you've made it through this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you again soon.